Hi, and welcome to the Sci-Fi and Sunshine podcast. I think as a writer myself, I can bite off more than I mean to chew. And so the way that you've incorporated so many beautiful themes, universal themes of you've got this it's set in a different galaxy, but you've got these two warring races that are separated by a literal schism in space, which I don't want to give away too much of the book because I want the people listening who haven't had the pleasure to go ahead and get this book and read it. But there are these this wonderful imagery that you could tie into things going on in our present day, but it's set in a galaxy far, far away. You've got the kind of undercover prince who is wandering around in the desert at the very beginning of the book, who is kind of a little bit unsure about himself, and then he goes on this wonderful journey, has this wonderful arc, and then, like you said, you tie in the dogs and the tree, and you do it so beautifully with the science fiction backdrop. I mean, it's absolutely delightful, all these different, the different creatures. So, for example, let's talk a little bit. There is an illustration in the book of what the creature is called, a burden. And I thought that was such an interesting, clever creature. Tell us a little bit about how you came up with some of these. There's the worm that's like a rat-like creature. There's the hydrides. How did you come up with some of these sci-fi elements?
Well, and that was part of the fun of the book, is creating that mythology and giving a setting and a place that was so complete that the reader, was immersed in it, and creatures like the burden, and the worm, which is basically short for vermin.
Sure. Yeah.
It's all wordplay, and I totally drew that from Lewis Carroll and Through the Looking Glass, and even the world building as far as the belief system goes. I recently reread this with my daughter, but Watership Down, I mean, Richard Adams created a whole belief system for rabbits.
Right. Yes.
and Shakespeare and Neil Gaiman and a number of other influences that really helped me define this world in my head. The funny thing is that when I started writing the book and Yvonne was going to do new illustrations for it, her original touchstones were anime, but also a real German woodcut pen and ink style, and that's what I thought was very appropriate for the book. Very much like what's his name, the illustrator for Alice in Wonderland. I mean, just amazing stuff.
Yes, yeah, it does have a little bit of that look with
exactly.
Yes, with touches
but
of the anime.
She got she got angry at me because she goes, "I don't do sci-fi. I don't trust spaceships. I do weird creatures. She's German, and so it's like, give me castles, give me." I said, "Draw what inspires you. You don't have to draw this other stuff." But then she got out of her comfort zone, and basically because David Bowie said, swim out to where you can't touch the bottom, and that's where you're going to be creative.
Oh, what an incredible story, too, because for her, as she's also an artist, I mean, we're in the arts. We're talking about acting, writing, illustration. It's all within the realm of the fine arts. And so for her to be willing to do that, it's, as the reader, getting to look at these beautiful visuals. I'm so thrilled that she went ahead and took that plunge to go outside of her norm to explore, because it's an incredible result, and it really serves the story so well. And she got to do a few castles in here too, which is a lot of fun to see the king and queen and the Allegra in her robes and just the beautiful castle type imagery that's also in there, which again you labeled it so well, the sci-fi fantasy. It's a genre that's a little bit more niche because you've got the hard sci-fi writers like Asimov and Niven and some of those classic storytellers, and then one of the authors that I've really fallen in love with from recent years is Jeffrey Carver's works. If you've never read him, he has a very similar niche of science fiction with that heavy fantasy involved. And I
Nice.
often think of Star Trek when I read his, because it's very much a group of people flung together. Some are alien. There's your main character who's kind of the human that you follow this character through all these journeys throughout the galaxies. And in many ways, that's what we're looking at here with the science fantasy, with the kingdoms, like you said, with the
Yeah.
but there's also these wonderful sci-fi elements that are also pretty, standard sci-fi. You've got an android character that he encounters. You've got the little again, I'm trying not to give too much away, but you've got the little orb that follows him around. That we won't get to how he even gets to some of these things, but those wonderful, and there's a big mystery element. So you've got mystery, you've got a little bit of romance, you've got fantasy. There are so many great threads in there. So
there's a war going on.
And
so
there's the military
Yeah.
sci-fi element, because yes, the main character is a soldier, and that's where we find him kind of in the midst of a lost battle that he barely managed to survive. And so he's kind of off in this distant world that is unfamiliar, and trying to scrape his way back to somehow survive. And so you've got that military element to it as well. And I thought that part was very well done. Can you tell us a little bit about just your ideas with some of these spaceships where they've got the hexes that they're some of the military side of it?
Yeah, no. Once again, it's interesting because it's and even in Yvonne's illustrations, there's a big steampunk aspect to it. And I remember when Rhett Bruno, the publisher but also the editor of the first book, he said, "Lou, really? They use candles?" And I mean, there's they have technology, right? I said, "Yeah, but come on, Yoda cooks over a fire in the same universe that the Death Star exists."
Exactly.
So,
yes. Exactly. Yeah.
And so there needed to be that difference between how far the Manoliths had come technologically speaking, and how far the Endirans were, and that disparity is why they're still at war, and we see this on our own planet. I mean, once again, a lot of the themes are social commentary without trying to hit you over the head with it.
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned some of your inspirations of other authors, even somebody like David Bowie, different inspirations. Yeah. And would you, in the military sense, what would you say, how did you kind of, now you've taken on military roles as an actor, so coming at it from the writer perspective, did you have to do much research to imagine how do these soldiers, what's their rank and file, coming up with some of that logistical stuff?
Well, first of all, I come from a military family. I was a Navy brat. So that mindset is very much part of my upbringing. But then, once again, also being a reader, if I were going to point to any inspirations on the military side, certainly Shakespeare, and a lot of his battles, and even quite honestly, the Once and Future King. I played, I played King Arthur in the National Tour of Camelot, and here was, and then even when I played the King in The King and I,
on Broadway, right?
You have exactly, I was nominated for a Tony. Here you have, two leaders who are trying to create a world that's better for the next generation, for their sons, for their people. And war is never the answer. And so they are striving for peace and doing it from a compassionate and yet intellectual place. And that's what I wanted to imbue Everson, our hero, with. But also, him fighting against the tradition of his father, who is also a compassionate leader, but who has waged war. And the erstwhile villain of the piece, Xander the Firm, who is a mad king.
Right.
And the funny thing is I called him a mad king before Game of Thrones.
Yes, I can attest to that too. Yes. And it's not even the first, it's not that any of us came up with those things. Those all the way back to Shakespeare.
Exactly.
There were mad kings that we saw in literature.
100%.
Yes, yes. So, and it's wonderful that you have this incredible depth of experience to draw from with your acting, with your even writing screenplay, as you probably can tell us. It's quite different than writing a novel. And when you decided, okay, I'm gonna take my manager's advice, I'm gonna make this a novel, where was your mindset in terms of how to get an agent, a literary agent? Because I imagine your manager was in the realm of acting. So
Yes.
Tell us a little bit how you went about choosing Athon Books, who published your book, and your literary agent, who I want to give a huge thank you to, Penelope Burns, who connected us here to have this interview. And tell us a little bit about that process, which I imagine looks a little bit different in the acting world.
100%. And I think the thing that I love about this story is that it tells other writers that I didn't have it easy. Just because I'm famous in the acting world does not automatically mean my book is going to get published.
Sure, yeah.
And so this is a very interesting journey in the respect that I was a few chapters in, and I was doing the series Longmire, and
yes.
Craig Johnson, we became very good friends. And I finally got brave enough to go, hey, Craig, I'm working on this novel off and on. Can I show you a couple of chapters and tell me what you think? And, am I wasting my time? And, he and his wife, Judy, read a few chapters and said, man, you got to finish this. And by the way, credit where credit is due, it was Craig's idea to magnetize the broadswords. And that proved to be such a wonderful plot device, not only in this book, but I'll tell you now, in the sequel.
We're going to talk more about that.
Yeah.
But I love that he and his wife encouraged you to, and were able to say to you, this book needs to be written, because sometimes it really is that person who's been there, done that, meaning he is the author of the Longmire series that you're getting input from, and happens to be a friend. So for him, not just as a friend, but somebody with expertise of what you're trying to do.
So then what happened is that when I finished, he was an agent who, that's not her cup of tea. We submitted to a couple of places, and it was passed on. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I kind of put it away for a little bit, became friends with Chris Bojalian, author of, the Flight Attendant and The Witching Hour. I mean, tons and tons of best-selling books. He and I are doing some side projects together. But he read it, and he loved it. And he said, can I give this to my agent? And I went, please. And so he gives it to Deborah Gelman. And the funny thing is that Deborah had represented the first novel I ever wrote in college.
Oh,
and
my
that
goodness.
got a couple of dozen passes. I never followed up on it. But she liked my writing from a long time ago, and she gave this to Penelope, who understood the YA world a little better, and she led me to Athon Books.
That right there.
And by the way, I'm going back and I'm reworking the manuscripts from college because there's still something there. That's actually the third book I'm working on right now.
Oh my goodness! So that listeners who are aspiring authors, or writers who are passionate about their writing, I hope they are listening so closely to what you just shared with us, because you, who are a big, famous Hollywood star, your book was passed on. That means, think of many people know the J.K. Rowling example, that Harry Potter was passed on some dozen times before it found its publisher. And look at where that book ended up. So, meaning just because someone passes on your book, it doesn't mean to give up right away. And thank goodness you didn't give up, that you kept going. You had that beautiful connection of somebody that said, hey, I might have an agent who would be interested in this, even though those other ones, it wasn't for them. And that's the thing about being in that sphere of traditional publishing as your book is, that there are people who are going to say, hey, this is a great book, it's just not something our company is publishing. Or this agent might say, this is not what I'm representing at the moment, I'm looking at a little more hard sci-fi, for example, than the fantasy elements you're including. And you do want...
That's all for now. As you venture through this sci-fi world we all find ourselves living in, may you be the sunshine to the people around you today. Adios.